All right, good morning. Are you guys having a Flounder Heights debate in chat? All right. Go off. Hello, Chara, Lily, Nito, Emil. I don't think people are saying they're flanking with X-Watch unless they are. I'm really way off here. That's fine. Sucks, K-Bot. You'll have to catch the VOD on YouTube at 25 Popgun. Or I guess watch it later on Twitch. I always know who my YouTube audience is because they always DM me like 2 days later. It's like Wednesday, I'm at work, I'm getting DMs. Hey, I heard you said this on the podcast. And I was like, oh, yeah. Love the YouTube audience. Riley. Hello, K-Bot. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or a VOD, Twitch or YouTube, or Spotify. While you are trying to convince me that Turf War is a viable mode for competitive, counting the amount of times Zach has to adjust his mask in the middle of the analyst desk, being late to your tournament set, costing your team games because you are in the middle of a Squid Coliseum set. Whatever it is that you're doing right now, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. Hey, I saw yesterday Dapple Productions is going to be hosting a LAN in the Netherlands in early June. briefly looked at the video, and that's cool. I'm excited for Europe. I know there was a LAN in France. I don't think Breeze has come back post-pandemic, or if it did, it wasn't. There was another LAN at some point somewhere else in Europe, but this seems like the first real, maybe this we can get the whole continent together and have an actual LAN so that they don't have to look over and see our low tide city and riptide and just be like, man, I wish we could have fun stuff like that. Well, it looks like Dapple Productions is providing something fun in early June. I hope that's not too quick of a turnaround. Announcing, hey, you guys got 2 months to get here. Hopefully that's plenty of time for people to actually get out there. If there's anybody that is a regular listener to the podcast that is planning on attending this LAN, make sure you let me know. We'll send you as the official Popcast reporter. We'll interview you on the show, and you can give us some information about how that LAN went down. We are not going to be there. My wife and I would love to go to Europe at some point for a Splatoon LAN. Not when we're pregnant and have a little bit more time to plan trips for stuff like that. But eventually, at some point, we would love to go to Europe for a LAN, wherever it is. I'm sure the Netherlands are lovely in June. News of tournaments that may be of interest to the casual listener of the podcast. The InkTV qualifier number 1 is this upcoming weekend. There are 2 qualifiers. There's one this weekend and there's one next weekend. I believe both are Saturdays. It's an open invite. Anybody can sign up for it. Only the top 4 teams from each tournament are going to move on to the actual league phase. We're going to talk more about InkTV a little bit later, but I'm just pointing out now, you guys can sign up for it and play in it if you are listening to this. But no crying and complaining if you're a low link team and you get seeded up against a monster in round 1, and act like that you're not supposed to be seeded like that. No, that's not how the real world works. Sorry. Minnow Cup is this weekend on Saturday. It's going to be Splat Zones edition with that. Man, we just had a Minnow Cup and we're already having another one. Little Squid League is the weekend after that. So lots of exciting stuff going on in the world of competitive Splatoon that is not related to Nintendo. That's nice. Today we're going to be talking about InkTV, which is something we're going to be discussing a lot here on the podcast this, or I guess next month, the month of April. So we might as well do a little bit of an initiation, talk about it, and let you guys know what it's all about and what I'm personally looking forward to seeing come out of InkTV this month. But first, if you have watched any episode of the Popcast in the past, which I should probably update the the actual date up top there is wrong, and this is the wrong episode number. So bear with us here. Today's the 27th. This is episode 168. Jeez. When am I going to stop doing these things? If you watched any of the past 167 episodes of the Popcast, which I know you have, you know I've been very critical of our overlords at Nintendo and been pretty fairly critical about them. It's not like it's been unjust, the things that I've said about them, and it's pretty obvious that I understand I'm never going to be invited to be a guest commentator for any of their events, and I am perfectly fine with that. It's understandable. And I'm going to continue to be critical of them because there's no reason for the competitive scene to ever trust Nintendo. With what they've been doing with the Smash side of things for years now, there's no reason for us, the Splatoon side, to look at Nintendo and say, yeah, you're going to take care of us. You're going to treat us well over the years. Yeah, sure, okay. But as long as they are making these tournaments, these commercial tournaments, as I call them, and they're not really doing anything else, they're not interfering, they're not trying to shut down anything that we're trying to do, It's harmless. I think it's fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It seems to be nothing but a positive for us across the board, at least so far. That's what these are, by the way. We've talked about this before. These Nintendo tournaments, they are just giant commercials, which is fine. But that explains why they do things like Turf War for seeding and make sure that you have to play all 4 modes before you can go to anything else, so that everything shows up on stream and the commentators can explain the rules of each mode to the idiots in chat, which there were a ton of idiots in chat yesterday. But man, I've said this before. It bears repeating after watching Sayonara absolutely crush Starburst for 2 minutes and 50 seconds on Mako Mart and still lose. Why would we ever consider using Turf War in competitive tournaments when it doesn't even come down to the last 30 seconds anymore? It now comes down to the last 10 seconds with what we saw in that match. But Popgun, can't you say that about any of the modes? Doesn't it always just comes down to who plays the best in the last 30 seconds? No, if that match was any other mode, it wouldn't even have gone the full 3 minutes. That match would have been done in the first minute because there would have been a KO feature built in. The fact that you have to play out the entire 3 minutes is the problem with Turf War and why it makes it so the first 2.5 minutes means absolutely nothing. No other mode works in that mindset. If this was Rainmaker, and instead of the objective being whoever scored the most points when the time runs out, it was just more so, where did the Rainmaker end? Oh, it's just a smidgen on the enemy side of the map at the end of 5 minutes. Okay, that means the other team won. Wait a minute. What if I score 100 points? Well, there's no KO feature. You got to play out the whole 5 minutes. Just whoever has the possession of the Rainmaker at the end is the winner. That's the kind of nonsense that it comes down to. And you can sit here and say that Turf War is fun. I agree with you. I think it's fine. I don't have an issue with Splatfest. I don't really have an issue with, well, I have tons of issues with Nintendo's Turf War ladder thing, but who cares? But don't sit here and try to tell us that without a KO feature, that Turf War is a viable option for tournaments. It's not. It's absolutely not. Regardless, we're getting back on topic now. So yes, that tournament that you saw yesterday, while it seemed like an absolutely fantastic time for the players that participated in it, none of them tweeted out anything negative that I saw. Nothing but positiveness and overall enjoyment of the entire experience. It is still a giant commercial. But I must admit, that was a really entertaining commercial. Wow, Nintendo really has been stepping up their game. And every time you see them do one of these tournaments, especially the in-person tournaments, they're adding new wrinkles here and there. They are clearly learning from their production mistakes that they start adding in new things as these tournaments go along. I really like the fact that they kept the commentators in the entire time. Last time they had that event, as they were launching Splatoon 3, they had like 5 different commentators, but they rotated them out like every other set. So you had like a different, like 2 of them would leave and go do something in the crowd and 2 more would come in. And it just got to this awkward point to where when you got to the grand finals, it just seemed like, all right, well, let's move these people out of the way and get these are the best commentators that are here right here, and the other 2 commentators let's just get you guys out. You were just here for fun. So instead, this time around, you got Jordan, you got Nine, and you got Mel, and you just keep them in there. And you got Zach. Oh my goodness, Zach was absolutely fantastic. You guys often will say things thinking that you might be better than commentators that we have on IPL or something like that. It's really easy to say that, but when you get into that mic booth and you have to actually commentate live and you have to deal with your own idiots in chat, it's a completely different thing. I can't even imagine how difficult it must be to look at a match live, analyze it, think in your head what you're going to talk about for 5 minutes. Remember key moments that you want to circle back to on technology that you probably had to learn on the fly with the little like Monday Night Football highlighter is circling these certain things and here and there. Like what Zach was doing on that analyst desk was fantastic. And Nintendo got the perfect person to do that. There's very few people on this planet that could break down Splatoon in that kind of way and make it somewhat entertaining and intellectual at the same time. I know Jim from Squid School pulled it off fantastically online for 20XX4. But man, what Zach did was really entertaining. It was a joy to watch. Does it suck that Zach basically has to break down why this person's crab was better than that person's crab? Yes, but that's just the nature of the game. There's not, if that's what you got to talk about, that's what you got to talk about. But I could just tell that was probably extremely difficult to pull off. Everything those guys were doing was extremely difficult to pull off. So the fact that they're able to do that, was really cool to see from a production standpoint. You got to give them props for that. Earlier the week before the tournament started, Pro Chara went to Twitter and put up a poll. Now, I've talked often about Twitter polls here, how if you want to use a Twitter poll to decide things for the fate of the community, you're a moron. If you want to use Twitter polls for something like, hey, who do you think's going to win this tournament? Those are perfect. It's fine. That's what Twitter's there for. It's not a voting system like an actual election kind of thing. No, it's just a poll. What are you guys' thoughts on who's going to win? So Tara tweets out, here are the 4 teams. Which team do you think is going to win? 2,548 people voted. Of those 2,500 people, only 61.9% of them thought Starburst was going to win. In hindsight, that seems like a crazy, stupid number. That 38.1% of the people that voted didn't think Starburst was going to win. But that's kind of why I tweeted out Starburst's stats the day before the actual tournament, because it'd be absolutely bonkers to go into that event thinking anything other than what actually happened on Sunday was going to happen. And, the other 38.1% now know what we all know about Starburst, who is now 42-0 in Splatoon 3 against the West. And that is whatever kind of patch note potentially comes out today or right now as the Popcast is live. It doesn't matter what they do to Splash, which they're not going to do anything. It doesn't matter what they're going to decide is going to nerf the crab, or what's going to counter the crab, or what they're going to do to the machine, or how they're going to continue to screw over Brella yet again. Unless they find a way to nerf Ice, Bran, Bagel, and Biscuit, it means absolutely nothing as far as the top end of the competitive scene is concerned, because Starburst is the number one thing in this community that needs to be nerfed right now. It's not even fair anymore watching these events. They played the best players that North America has ever produced, and they treated them like this was a Saturday group stage for the actual event that was going to take place the next day. Like this was just the warm-up for the real tournament that was going to take place on Sunday. They went 9-0 against them all. They only looked threatened like a few times, and one of them was that jank turf war game that we were talking about. The other one was the Eeltail Alley Clam Blitz game, which was, as the commentators were saying, the best possible situation for Starburst or for Sayonara to get a win. Well, they had a lead for a little bit. Somebody has to go through and record how much time Starburst spent losing in those 7 games that they played against Destiny Bond and Sayonara. It's probably 2 minutes at most. It was just absolutely ridiculous the ways that they were destroying these guys. Destiny Bond couldn't really touch them. And that, oh my gosh, that Undertow Rainmaker Game 3 against Sayonara. Oh my God. That is that is the definition of dominance. What they showed right there. That game, Sayonara got to see Starburst how the rest of us commoners, have been seeing Starburst for years. If you guys have played in matches against a Starburst or an FT Win team or some sort of pickup of that in like a tournament, I know firsthand, I play those guys. They're always in my LAN group whenever I play in a LAN. It's so frustrating. But if you've ever played against them, you know that feeling. You know what it's like to be Sayonara in that game 3 where they can't dunk the Rainmaker. Like, you're using every fiber in your being to make sure that they don't score more than 99 points against you. You're just struggling. Your neurons are firing at beyond plus ultra just to stay in the game, to make it go a little bit longer so you can have the bragging right of saying that you didn't get KO'd by Starburst. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Starburst, whenever they get splatted, they're looking at their phone so they can watch a Valorant tournament that's going on because they're more interested in that than the opponent they're playing at the current time, while Biscuit is busy in your spawn theory crafting different ways to squid bag. Like, they look genuinely bored while they're destroying you, and they do that to us. They do that to us, the SAC teams, the low ink teams, the +3 nobodies. They don't do that to Sayonara. They don't do that to Destiny Bond. But we've gotten to this point now to where they are. They're treating the best players in North America like they're just fodder, like they're just a distraction to something else they'd much rather be doing. My goodness. If that was a boxing match, if that set against Sayonara was a boxing match, they would have ended it in that game 3. They would not have let game 3 even end right there. A Tio would have stepped in and said, stop, we're done. Sayonara this is their last time playing in a tournament. They don't deserve to go out like this. They deserve better than this. Let's stop it right here. But no, it's the best of 7. We got to drag them out. Well, you want to go to Clan Blitz Eel Tail? Keep this one going? All right. Yikes. This level of dominance begs for this question to be asked. And it is by far my least favorite question / topic that can be brought up. Who's better? Who had the better era? FT Win or Starburst? Well, forget the fact that Starburst's DNA is basically 75% of that old FT Win team anyways. It's kind of the same thing if you look at it a little bit deeper. The question is so dumb. And you'll see this a lot, especially in the month of July on Sports Talk Radio, when they have nothing else to talk about. NBA's done, the NFL hasn't started up yet, and all they have is Major League Baseball to talk about. You'll see radio hosts on Sports Talk Radio just talk on and on. Who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? It's so stupid. They're two completely different eras. They never played against each other, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a good way for two people to argue with each other for 15 minutes before they go to commercial break. And it's so annoying because in order to make the argument, you kind of got to diminish the accomplishments of somebody else. Can't we just appreciate what FT Win did during their era and what Starburst is currently doing in their era? Like, we just got to be able to step back and say they were both really good and they were both enjoyable for their time, unless you had to be the poor sap that had to play against one of them. I judge greatness, though, by one attribute. It's not how many wins you have, what your records are. It's more so how many graveyards of teams did you fill along the way. Let me ask you guys a question. And K-Bot would know the answers to this, and Magic would know the answers to this, but I'm assuming the vast majority of people who just listen and lurk this podcast would not know the answers to these questions. Do you guys remember Supernova? Quantum? Sayonara the first time? The Splatoon 2 Sayonara? Low Key? In Control Splatoon? Do you remember any of those teams? Solar Flare? You might remember one or two of them. And yes, some of you who've been a part of the podcast for a long time are in chat right now saying you remember some of those teams. But you know why the vast majority, the casual listener, will not remember, will never remember any of those teams? Because FT Win kept them from doing anything. FT Win existed and prevented all of them from advancing anywhere in the scene from where they wanted to go, other than saying that they got to be the second place team to FT Win in some sort of tournament. Some of those teams are so irrelevant that one of those team names I threw out wasn't even an actual team name. I just made it up. And some of you aren't even going to know which one of those teams I completely made up. It's the era we're in. I was not a part of the competitive Splatoon scene when Ghost Gaming and Kraken Paradise were having their runs with each other. I know who Ghost Gaming / Team Olive and Kraken Paradise are. You know what I have no clue of? Who did they beat? Who did they play? I before they got to those grand finals where they went up against each other, who did they play leading up to that? I have no idea. I wasn't a part of the scene then. Some of you old heads would remember that stuff, but I wouldn't. Because of FT Win's existence, so many of those teams were not able to get the job done. And what happened is you saw a lot of those teams disband after a handful of months, play musical chairs with their roster, build something new until you get a brand new team who would try and fail again, break it apart, rinse and repeat, and eventually you start creating this team called Starburst. I pointed this out. It's so stupid to have the FT Win versus Starburst debate because at its core, Starburst doesn't exist without FT Win dominating the scene so much that eventually you create something like Starburst that after like a year of them being in existence, they finally wrestle the crown away from a depleted, not FT Win team at Riptide 21 and have taken it on since then. Starburst is now starting to get a couple of teams to fill up their graveyards at this point. They claim the souls of Sayonara and Destiny Bond, and for like half an hour on Twitter, which turned out to be a lie, Crush Soda as well. Now, to be fair to all those teams, Sayonara, it seemed like one of their players was just going to be stepping down after the event anyways. Just not having enough time to continue grinding competitive Splatoon, needed to focus on other things in their personal life. I don't think Starburst had anything to do with that. Destiny Bond, the elephant in the room, their captain, I guess we found out it was their captain yesterday, is the first player to ever be perma-banned by Splat Safety. So they can't use that player in anything non-Nintendo related anyways. So the writing was kind of on the wall that if those players wanted to keep grinding, they were going to have to do it without that player. So that leaves Destiny Bond in this awkward spot. And they finally said, this was the end for us as well. And I guess Crush Soda is still a thing, unless it's not. I did not. When Keo tweeted out today that Goss was stepping away, I was like, I don't believe anything you have to say. I'm not believing that. This is a boy who cries wolf situation going forward. But something new is going to rise from the ashes of that. Something with the leftover players from Sayonara and Destiny Bond, maybe not particularly together, but we're going to see those players come back until they finally say that they're done moving forward in this scene. But it's still going to be a year, maybe a year plus, before the gap starts closing with Starburst. And the gap seems so comically far apart at this point then it begs the question of what is going to cause the gap to get closer. I saw Lily tweet this out yesterday during the set that Starburst, I believe, was playing either. It was during one of the times Starburst was just clowning on someone yesterday. Why are they trying to use Starburst's own weapons against them? Why are they trying to mirror match the best players in the game right now with their own weapons? I mean, that's a fair point. The problem is you can't just drop the weapons you're using, pick up a new comp, and try something new immediately. It's going to take a long time. If somebody were to go off meta and try to grind and lab out ways to where they can come up with some way to beat Starburst, they're going to have to go through this long process, and it's going to be frustrating. And you're going to take awkward, upset losses along the way, and it might not even be the right answer. But that's kind of what needs to take place. But teams don't want to do that because then you got to take a step back. Things are going to get worse before they're going to get better. Like, the gap is going to get much wider before it's going to close down. And the only way that the gap gets closer is if Starburst doesn't continue to improve. Well, they got a reason to keep improving, right? Yes, they're 42-0 against the West, but their record against Japan is much more pedestrian, at least by their standards. For the rest of us, we can't even take a game off Japan. For them, they're pretty much dead even with the teams that they play Japan in the West in our tournaments. They've yet to win a major, except for like a Mode Cup here or a Japan Rainmaker only tournament there. They've yet to win a major on our own home turf. We keep hosting these events, the 20XX, the Storm Breaks, the both Super Jumps to this point. Our time zone, our rule set, no splat zones can be used repetitively in grand finals. They still can't beat Japan in those scenarios. That must be eating away at them. That is the fire that can continue to prove and motivate them. So it's not like they're going to go stagnant. It's not like these guys are Goku who's like, oh, nobody's at my strength, so I guess I'm not going to keep trading. No, they have a whole nother country, basically a whole nother planet of monsters that they can keep grinding with to go after. While everybody's chasing them, they're chasing something much bigger. So that's why this theory of the gap closing, okay, you might catch up to where they are today, a year from now, but they're already gone. They're already a whole nother step ahead by that point. They're too far behind to catch up to them. And by the way, if there's any notion out there that we need to ban Japan from the Western tournaments, from the Western majors, did you like what you saw yesterday? Well, that's it. That is a tournament that bans Japan. Do you think throwing in EU is going to make things any different? Honestly, do any of you think if we throw in some EU players to that tournament yesterday that there's going to be a different result? It's just going to be a epic losers finals between two teams that's going to go the distance to a game 5. That's going to be a crazy back and forth game 5. And then the winner is just going to go on to see, what kind of mood is Biscuit in today. Are they going to squid bag on the tower? Or are they going to hop off the tower, do a little twirl dance and, shake their booty around a little bit in your own spawn like that for 4 straight games. And then it's done at that point. Whew. Appreciate it while it's here, though. What did end FT Win? What ended the FT Win era? College. I mean, honestly, that's it. If it wasn't for that, we could still very well be in the FT Win era for all we know. Man, real life really gets in the way, doesn't it? Take it from a 32-year-old balding man who is having a child in about 4 months. Life is awesome, and there is a life outside of competitive Splatoon. And it's hard to really balance both. And eventually, that's what got FT Win. And it seems like that's the only thing that's going to stop Starburst at this point. There are some other teams coming up, though. Some other teams that can take a stab at things, trying to make things a little bit more competitive. We'll talk about them in the next session that'll be coming up. What is the future of competitive Splatoon going to be looking like? Hopefully we'll get some answers to that this upcoming weekend. How dare I insinuate there are lives? There is grass outside. When all the snow melts, which most of it has melted over the course here. Actually, I got to start mowing the yard at some point. I need to get a new lawnmower, maybe an electric one. Congratulations to Starburst, and congratulations to all 4 teams that participated in that event. It looked like they all had a good time. Congratulations to the Mario Kart that happened right before it as well. Some fun times watching that. Man, competitive Mario Kart. There's some skill that goes involved. There's a lot of skill that goes involved in that. As I was watching that, I was just like, well, what's the point? Some jackass that's dead last that has no shot at winning can fire off a blue shell and disrupt things that are happening way up in the front for everybody else. Like, that's dumb. But as you see the same guy winning every single race over and over and over again, it's like, okay, there's probably something more than just RNG luck going on here. There might be a little bit of skill involved in that. We'll talk about InkTV coming up. Before we get into that, though, we got to boogie on down to talk about some other things that happened during the week. It is time for the weekly recap. SOS number 102 was won by Duckies. That is a roster made up of Oscar, Bandit, Drift, and Inri. Cherry Limeade took second place, and Smoothie rounded out third for your top 3. It is amazing what happens when Nintendo doesn't decide to drop a 2-hour patch or update or whatever into the game while the tournament is supposed to take place. There's rumors that it might affect SOS number 103 this upcoming Wednesday, and they might play a Splatoon 2 tournament. Future for note, I'm never covering a Splatoon 2 on here on the Popcast again. So if SOS 103 is the Splatoon 2 tournament, I'm not going to reference it at all. We're just going to pretend it never happened. Hammerhead was won by Assault to Pepper. Mako Bracket was won by Piggies in a Blanket. And Lantern Bracket was won by Rapid Ascent. Proving Grounds number 9 was won by Sonder. Second place went to Who Up With They Worm. And Qatar. The whole country of Qatar ended up in third place. Single elimination must be really stressful. I mean, just knowing that you don't have that safety net of loser's bracket probably makes one loss in a best of 5 set feel like 2. I wouldn't play in it, but apparently more people would. I cannot believe more people are signing up every single time we do have Proving Grounds, despite the fact that I go out of my way to make the format as unfriendly as possible to low-level teams. They still keep signing up for a single elimination tournament that is geared to try to bring in the best of the best players in this community. Gotta admire that dedication from them. 40 teams played in this most recent single elimination tournament. The Collegiate Cephalopod Association, information sent to me by the Riley Rooster in chat. In Div 1, Penn State University took on the University of Texas Dallas, the Stars of Orion. They beat them 4-2. Penn State won that one 4-2 in Div 1. In Div 2, University of Texas Dallas, the unidentified Flyfish Outbreak, got a 4-0 sweep over the University of Arizona Tax Collectors. UC Berkeley, the Squids at Cal, also in Div 2, got a 4-3 win over the Ohio State University. Octo and Squids United. Oh, The Bears at Cal getting the better end of the Buckeyes in that one. Over down into Div 4, the University of Florida Storm Cells got a 4-0 win over the Dakota State University. Man, Dakota State's got a Splatoon team. When is Western Kentucky going to get a Splatoon team? Come on now. Pick it up, Hilltoppers. You guys aren't playing in the tournament, the NCAA tournament. No, you got nothing else to do. Start making a Splatoon team. University of Florida beat the Storm Cells beat the Dakota 4-0. As I'm struggling to find the rest of my bearings here. There we go. Still in Div 4, the University of California, San Diego, UCSD Esports got a 4-1 win over Florida State University, the Seminole Cephala Squad. Oh, both teams secured their win, keeping them both in the running for the second playoff spot in their group. If you'd like to follow more action with the Collegiate Cephalopod Association, their Twitter is at CCA_Splatoon. Their Twitch is at twitch.tv/CCA_Splatoon. Falco Flyer Splatoon Tourney Channel streams a lot of those sets as well, including last night. And that was your weekly recap. Sponsored by N95 Masks. If you are running an analyst desk and you don't want to have to touch your face every 2 seconds, I recommend getting a mask that actually straps onto your head and you never have to actually touch your mask at all. Look at these things. And especially if any of you are planning on going to a LAN, I recommend a mask that actually straps onto your head. The ones that like go around the ears, for like an hour, I think it's fine, but for the extended course of a LAN, those things tend to cut into my ears. So something like this keeps the mask sturdy, takes pressure off of your ears. Yes, you look like you're there to exterminate cockroaches. That's the only downside. But comfort and accessibility way outweigh the typical mask that you see Dan the man is wearing there on the left. N95 masks, the official sponsor of today's episode of the Weekly Recap. Beginning of the pandemic, I had like a mask that you could like tie off on the back of your head, and it was a cloth one. And at the beginning of the pandemic, they were basically just saying, hey, here's how you can make your t-shirt into a mask. As we've come to learn now, cloth masks do nothing. You might as well not wear anything at all. But yeah, I learned pretty quickly during that whole year where I had to wear a mask nonstop at work. I was like, all right, we need to find more comfortable ways to do this. It doesn't slide down. So I asked this question. What does the future of the competitive West going to look like? That we know that Sayonara has said sayonara, and Destiny Bond, well, Nintendo's over, so they can't really plan anything going forward with that roster anyways. What is the future of the competitive scene going to look like? Is it just Starburst and nobody else? Well, we're going to find out our answers to that pretty quickly, actually. This upcoming weekend, InkTV is making its grand return. Where do you guys know InkTV from? Probably one of two things. What most of you know InkTV from is BNS, Black and Spoon, which is the names of the TOs for that event. When are JPEG and I going to make a PNJ? When we retire from, when we finally get banned from IPL, when they realize how crazy we are. You probably remember BNS. You might also remember what I believe is the last tournament InkTV did, which was a tournament that had no TOs in it. As they middle finger to the community as they were leaving, decided that, you know what? We're going to run a tournament, and there's going to be no TOs there. So if you have an issue on Battlefy or you got to go to help desk for something, we're not going to help you with it. So I guess in theory, you could have just signed up as one player, and as soon as the Battlefy match started, instantly give yourself a 3-0 and move on. And when the other team says, we didn't even play, and report a score, or report a dispute, no TO is going to come and fix it, so you just auto-win that. I should have done that when I had the chance. But InkTV now, back from the brink. After being off for, what was that, 2-3 years that they've been on a bit of a hiatus. Spoon come roaring back into the community and rallying up the troops to create what is probably going to be the marquee event of the grassroots community of this entire year. That isn't a LAN, I should say. When was the last time we had a league? Do you guys know what Tassel is? Now, the people in chat are pretty smart today. So yes, you guys know what Tassel is. Probably knows what Tassel stands for. But I will still argue the vast majority of people, especially if you join the scene in Splatoon 3, you have no idea what Tassel even stands for. But it was the last time that we had a league. Similar to the tournament format of what Ludi is for Div X, where you had two different groups of teams that would play each other slowly over the course of a week. The thing is, though, Tassel would broadcast every single match. It would break down and analyze the results of every single match that would happen afterwards. It was a big production. They had an all-star event. The Talk Speed Up podcast was running pretty regularly. Then they were doing like weekly recaps of each week of Tassel, talking about those a little bit more in depth. It was like an actual professional Splatoon league, and it was awesome. And you had the best teams across Europe and North America, not the DivX teams, the teams beyond the DivX teams that were playing in it. But we haven't had something like that in 2-ish years now at this point. It's been way too long since we've had a high-quality production event for the best of the best. And that is what InkTV is aiming to do right here. As cool as the overlords are, the Nintendo overlords, when they run their tournaments, the grassroots community is the ones that are doing all of the work behind the scenes. The ones that are doing all the actual legwork to make sure that this community is thriving and that we are producing the teams that Nintendo can eventually use for their giant commercial tournament. And this InkTV tournament is going to be a high-level production event. And I don't know what all has been announced so far. Like, I've involved very slightly in the, like, just seeing what the production stuff is going to be for this event. And when I initially wrote this down, it wasn't even announced that all of the orgs were going to be broadcasting the entire tournament. And by all the orgs, I mean IPL, Dapple Productions, InkTV, and Falco Splatoon Tournament. All four of them are going to be broadcasting this event. I'm really curious to see what the numbers for that are going to be. Who's going to be watching what? Is it going to be just like more people watching IPL or whatever, or what? Or if people even still active, like dust off their follow that they gave to InkTV all those years ago, if they're going to be watching that. I think it's really going to come down to what matches are on what specific channel. Now, it is Monday at the time of the recording of this episode of the podcast. The tournament is Saturday. That means that we have no idea who's actually going to play in this tournament. However, by some act of God, there are already a lot of quality teams that have signed up for this event. Completely signed up for this event. On Smash.gg, nonetheless. Excuse me, Start.gg. It's not Smash anymore. So there's actual teams on a Monday that I could sit here and talk about. That's pretty cool. And a lot of them are going to be the ones that are going to be rivaling the Crush Sodas, I guess that's left after what was happening yesterday, to figure out who gets to be the one worthy enough to challenge Starburst to see if we can bring them back down to planet Earth a little bit. Here's some of the teams that have signed up so far, or at least of this morning when I last checked. First off, Ascension is going to be playing in the first qualifier on Saturday. Ascension, I believe, is the most recent team to push Starburst to the brink of a Game 5. I pointed out in the tweet yesterday, on Saturday, that Starburst has been pushed to a Game 5 6 times, and they are 6-0 in all of those games. Ascension being one of the most recent teams that actually do that. What I would like to see out of Ascension, and there's several other teams that are kind of plagued with this issue as well. If there's a set that has Ascension on, the commentators will treat it like it's not Ascension, but it's Twig. It's just Twig versus whoever they're playing. And it's understandable. When you get top 1 in all 4 modes in one season, it's noteworthy. Twig is the king, the monarch, if you will, of solo queue. Deserves some recognition. But it's about time Evan, Shinex, and Swin all got a little bit of notoriety as well. And hopefully when you see Ascension on, you can start paying attention to why this team as a whole is really good and not just their insanely cracked gal player who always beats you in solo queue. Alliance Rogue has already signed up for this event. Now, Alliance Rogue, Gray, Kiver, and Urza. Okay, cool. That's great. Didn't they drop a player / kick a player off their team? Who's their fourth going to be? As of right now, the fourth player on their roster is Fuzzy. So how good of this version 5.2 of Alliance Rogue going to be in the grand scheme of things? Always a question to ask, but they seem to be at times the premier dominant team out of Europe, if it isn't for Graveyard Shift or a Jackson that steals the spotlight from them for a little bit before Alliance Rogue eventually wrestles it back. The Outsiders have signed up. And if this is a brand new team of these players or just a pickup, I don't know. But it is a team worth noting anyways. Brian, Benji, Omega, and Keen. Omega and King, formerly of a Good Morning, Good Morning. It's more of an orange good morning, which is more like a sunset. So sunrise, sunset kind of team. That's what makes them an Outsiders. Keep an eye on what they do. Another team that has signed up, and this might be the more notable team that you want to pay attention to. If this team, when you talk about teams that eventually are going to rival Starburst, it's a team that has to stay together for a long time and has to take their lumps and slowly get better and figure out different ways to get things going here. Check back in on this team in a year if they keep the same exact roster. I'm curious what Seafoam's going to be able to do here. I feel like they have potential to be a contender down the road if they stay together. Check back in on that one. It might not be this season of the Resurgence League that InkTV has, but Seafoam seems to have that kind of DNA. By the way, DNA hasn't signed up for this one yet, but that's another team you'll want to keep an eye on if they do sign up in this one. Last Resort is here. Yes, I know they got upset in Proving Grounds by an SAC team 3-1. It's not, and by the way, it's totally fine to tweet that out mid-tournament. I don't know who became the person that decided to gatekeep anybody from being excited in the middle of a tournament. Well, you can't tweet that out until the tournament's over. It's a single elimination tournament. They're probably going to get eliminated in the next 20 minutes anyways. Who cares? You're allowed to be excited about that because getting a win against Last Chance is noteworthy. However, we talked about teams needing to experiment to improve, are going to take some upward bumps here and there before they get better. That's what essentially happened in that Proving Grounds tournament. So Last Resort, did I call them Last Chance? Last Resort is going to be just fine. That loss was not a fluke. You can't take it away from Sanctuary, but it's not going to be the standard. Last Resort is going to be just fine going forward. They've already signed up for this tournament, and as far as I'm concerned, has just as good a shot as anybody else here to make the actual Finals 4 spot and make the league. There's also the Rob. Now, one of you guys is going to have to correct me in chat. Robbe. Is it pronounced Rob or Robbie? I'm assuming since there's a E in there that it needs to be pronounced Robbie. But whenever there is a Robbie pickup in a tournament, in one of these major events, always really damn good with how they do. As of right now, when I saw it was this Robbie and Tacoban on an FS team. Not sure what any of that's true. So they got a couple more players to go, but it's at least a team that is noteworthy that has already signed up. And that is just the teams that have signed up so far as of Monday. You know that number is going to triple, quadruple by the time the tournament actually starts. And there's going to be a bunch more SAC +3, +2 pickups that are going to want to throw their hat into the ring to try to make a run at an event like this, knowing that they're going to be at some point broadcasted on and commentated by some fantastic commentators and broadcasters. And, of course, there's another qualifier that's going to be taking place next weekend. So if you see a team, you might not see a team this weekend, but you might see one the next time, which would be maybe something that would rise from the ashes of the Sayonara Destiny Bond breakup that we saw from yesterday. I don't know anything about that. I'm just assuming that if you were going to see some sort of team of Zero or .Q or Leafy at some point, not those three together, but just those three players in particular playing, maybe that would happen in the second qualifier. But the second qualifier, honestly, is probably just going to be filled with all the teams that didn't qualify this time around. Only 4 teams qualify in each of these qualifiers for the actual league. I listed off Ascension, Alliance Rogue, Outsiders, Seafoam, Last Resort, and the Robbie pickup, FS. That's 6 right there. Starburst signs up, one of those spots is automatically gone. If Crush Soda signs up, I think it's safe to say one of those spots is automatically gone. That leaves 2 spots. Probably Alliance Rogue takes it, and then it's just a battle between Last Resort, Seafoam, and Ascension feels a little bit better that day. And then you just get all of those other teams that'll be left over. They'll have to find their way to grind it out in the second qualifier against some other monster that's not going to sign up in the first one. So it's going to be a bloodbath, and there's going to be a lot of good teams that aren't going to make the final 8 spots for the actual league. But here's what's exciting about this InkTV Resurgence League. It's not just this one tournament that's happening this Saturday or the tournaments that's happening afterwards on the next Saturday. It's an actual month-long event, the entire month of April, basically, that's going to drive storylines in this community for a full month. You guys have something to talk about in between when you're squabbling about what the rules of Coliseums should be. Like, that's something that needs to be debated and talked about right now. No, we can stop talking about that crap and we can start talking about top professional level competitive Splatoon. That's great for the scene. That's something we desperately need. And more importantly, this is a thing that is coming from our own, and by our own, I don't mean like R as in me, like a royal R own. InkTV, the grassroots community, providing this event, this high quality production event for everybody to watch. And it's not something that Nintendo has their hands in. It's something that's all us. Me, you, the idiots on Twitter, the lovely people who watch this on YouTube. All of us get to enjoy this event because all of us created it. More specifically InkTV, but you get what I'm trying to say. There's no turf war. There's no ladder stage. There's no North America only. Europe's allowed to play in this. South America's allowed to play in this. The other countries that make up North America that are banned from the North American Open are allowed to play in this as well. Nothing that the overlords of Nintendo can do has a hand in this. InkTV just going to do this a lot better than what you saw on the last weekend. It's going to be a fantastic show. I'm going to be covering it every single week here on the Popcast. And this is kind of what the Popcast was made for, right? I mean, this is, yes, the Popcast started off as a low-level focus kind of thing, but over the past 168 episodes, we've been morphing into talking about everything in this scene. And we're finally at a point where we have something awesome to talk about. Every single week, we have something brand new to break down here on the Popcast. So we're going to be covering this weekly. So make sure you sign up for it. Make sure you watch it, or do both. Sign up and watch it at the same time. And if Starburst signs up, then hopefully this league can develop some sort of opponent that can finally rival them to some point. Can you counterpick Table Turf? I don't know. How's that Table Turf Dapples tournament going? I haven't watched any of it yet, but I want to start practicing Table Turf and compete in that at some point. Who keeps winning those tournaments? Whoever it is, I guarantee you the crown they wear is way too heavy. I'm going to take it from them. It's the polite thing to do. I still have yet to play a single game of Table Turf. Playing Halo more recently. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Popcast. If you'd like to be a part of the Popcast anyway, feel free to reach out on my socials below. Twitter, Mr_Popgun, Discord, Popgun, #5882, YouTube at 25 Popgun, Twitch at Popgun25, Anchor.fm/Popgun. We are going to be rating Squid School. Boom. Make sure you guys get vaccinated. Stay safe. Sign up for Low Tide City. And if you wear a mask, make sure it's got the straps on your head, not your ears.